got a lot of examples of coaches that have gone on to coach their alma mater or a coaching position they might have ties to. Of course, that's happened with the Lady Vols. Coop, let's jump in the hot tub and talk for a moment.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
No Lady Vols present. Sorry about that. First down, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
Generally, John, what's your take on players or coaches that return home and try to resurrect a program? Your thoughts on how that works or doesn't work throughout your career?
Well, it can work. It just depends on who the coach is. But overall, I think how you have to go about that, if you limit yourself in any way in a coaching search, you're in trouble. Caleb pointed out earlier that Caleb doesn't believe there are hardly any good coaches out there. And there are more bad ones than good ones. So I think when you limit yourself in any way, you're hurting yourself. You can't say we've got to get a Lady Vol. We've got to get somebody with Pat Summitt ties.
That is total bullshit.
Yeah, I think you have to, and you also can say we want to have a woman coaching a women's basketball team. You just got to get the best coach.
That's hot.
Thank you. It's don't limit yourself. So I think Tennessee it didn't have any choice when it made the transition after Pat became ill. It had to go to Holly Warlick. There was no real option there. That was an incredibly difficult situation. But Holly Warlick took the team to 3 Elite Eights and won a higher percentage of her games than Kellie Harper has. Kellie makes a great presentation. She's very articulate. She's good on camera. And she's much loved for playing on 3 national championship teams. But the program needs to progress more than it has. If for anyone who aspires to Tennessee being in the championship picture again, I think this team has talent. I think it's underachieved with its record so far, but it could finish strong. It's playing better now. It could upset LSU. That's not out of the question. But again, do you see it going further than the Sweet 16? No, not really.
Let me kick that to Caleb. Coop, what down?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, Caleb. What do you got with Coop?
Yeah, so, John, I brought up this topic because, as you see, Penny Hardaway is really, really struggling and right now. And they hired him only because he's a legend at Memphis. Now, they did have success. I'm from there. They did have success with Larry Finch when they hired him as a legend back in the 90s, but it was, but still, it's very dangerous. And then Michigan Juwan Howard is all but a dead man walking at Michigan right now. And the problem with those 2 hires is they were only hired because they were legends, not even because of their qualifications. My issue with hiring a legend is it's not that, to me, legends don't work out. I want to know your take on this. I feel like legends get a longer leash than they should probably get if they don't work out. I think the problem is if you hire a legend and they don't work out, you are willing to let them run your program all the way into the ground before you do what's necessary to fire them. Now, I know he revitalized Tennessee, but I felt that they gave Johnny Majors too long of a leash in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, Lord, I can tell you as a fan they did. Back in the day when I was a young 10, 12-year-old, I was ready for them to make the change for sure. Do you think, if I may pair this into second down, do you think the Lady Vols have given either Warlick or Harper too long?
Perhaps but it depends on what you want the program to be. And see, I'm not sure. I don't know what Danny White as AD wants the program to be. Danny White wasn't here when Pat Summitt was reigning supreme in women's basketball, so I think he has a different view of it.
It is really hard to envision what that was. The fact that in Knoxville, it was on the same parallel stage as a basketball team that a lot of people thought was just going to make the Final Four in no time. and a football team that was playing on top of its game. People outside of Knoxville think that sounds crazy, but there's a lot of truth to that. They were really on the same level at that point.
Yeah, well, it first it was Tennessee, and then became Tennessee, Connecticut in women's basketball. UConn ultimately passed Tennessee. But if you weren't here for that, you maybe Danny White is. I mean, he looks at the team as going to the NCAA tournament. It's making the Sweet 16. It's winning 20 games. I think in evaluating a program, you have to compare the program, what it is currently, to what it was, what is its history. That's why I'm so impressed with Tony Vitello in Tennessee baseball. I mean, it was one of the worst programs in the SEC for quite a while, not just a short run. And he's turned it into a national powerhouse. That, to me, is a great way to measure a program. Compare it to its history in any sport.
I
And
agree.
so I give him a lot of credit for that. And I think with the women's basketball program, I just don't know. I don't see Danny White making a change. I think next year, maybe the program didn't make the NCAA tournament, then that's a possibility. But I just don't know what his expectations are for women's basketball at Tennessee.
I think that's a very fair question. I want to ask this down via Cooper.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
If
You
Tennessee,
skipped third down, Dave, by the way. You skipped
Is that
straight over
third
third down. Bad
That's
officiating by
Cooper
Dave right
Mays.
there.
Third down.
Oh, that's like the Georgia. That's like the Colorado Missouri game when Colorado got a fifth down and ended up winning
But
the
this is the
national
reverse.
championship.
This is a reverse. We're going backwards in time. This is like the Benjamin Buttons of Lions Crew. So, John, do you what do you think Tennessee expects out of this? In other words, does Tennessee expect something than a Rick Barnes career out of its Lady Vols crew, which would be one run to the women's Final Four and a bunch of regular season success? Let me ask you that in 60 seconds, brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Imagine having the best spas made right here in the United States of America in your backyard. Dynasty Pools and Spas, their showroom is open in Athens right off the interstate. You can stop by and check out the best hot tubs and spas in the market. And in delivery, yes, they can do that to Knoxville or Chattanooga. They've got complete support, spa cover, and chemicals to keep your spa bubbling at its best. They also have pool chemicals as well. Dynasty Pools and Spas, amazing discounts for first responders, military, and even some blemish models that can save you a ton, and no one will ever notice. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Mention Off the Hook Sports, get $500 off. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to dynastypoolsandspas.com or stop by that showroom in Athens. dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. So, John, let me clean that question up for you, and I'll get to Caleb about it. Does Tennessee expect a perennial national championship winner or contender?
I'm not sure it expects either one. I just think right now, my guess would be it expects you to make the NCAA tournament, win more than 20 games, be competitive in the SEC, and that's good enough. Now, I don't know what the longtime followers of the program and maybe some boosters expect of the program, but I think that's kind of the administrative stance right now. You
Caleb?
I want to add that Kellie Harper got a contract extension last year. So that was like, job well done. You made this Sweet 16. Nice job. Keep on having more success. That speaks volumes to me.
Has to eat her. Caleb, thoughts?
But yeah, I guys, I'm really convinced that that's because she's played at Tennessee. I don't think it has anything to do with lack of care about the women's basketball program. I think it's because she played at Tennessee. The problem is Tennessee keeps hiring former players. And if they go this route again and they go hire Carol Lawson, say they move on from Kellie Harper and they hire Carol Lawson, they're going to find themselves in the same situation if Lawson doesn't work out. The issue is that they can't bring themselves to branch beyond the Lady Vols. And then when they do hire a Lady Vol and she doesn't work out, they can't bring themselves to make the necessary move to fire them.
Well, let me
That's not-
ask John this. Let me ask John this question. Cooper will close us on 4th down.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Is this more about hiring a Lady Vol or Danny White being a businessman? I'll be the first. I think it's Danny White being a businessman. I don't think he sees the nostalgia around the Lady Vols program. I think he sees that statue, and it's just a statue when he drives past Pat Summitt's statue next to Thompson Bowling. I don't think he sees that. I think as a businessman, we at Off the Hook Sports have had to make difficult decisions that I didn't want to make. That's what he sees it as. I don't think it's as much, Caleb, as you do, the former Lady Vols. I think it's just being a businessman. But John, you first, and then Caleb.
I think in the past it had to do perhaps more the hire of Kellie Harper. Philip Fulmer was the AD at the time. You know, he listened. He said he listened to people that had been there a while, female administrators who knew the program, and they said, you got to hire somebody with Tennessee ties. You got to hire a Lady Vol. So he did that. I don't think he really was, he was more concerned about making the right hire in football, and we saw how that worked out. But I think Danny White, I agree with you, Dave. I don't think Danny White has any sentimentality about this. He doesn't think of it. I think he looks at it as a business. This is not a huge revenue producer. And I think he compares it, he looks at it as he does his other programs. You make the postseason, you're in the NCAA tournament. That's good. You won 20 games. Last year when he gave Kellie Harper a contract extension, she won 25 games. She was third in the SEC, and she beat LSU, the eventual national championship. So that's fine. Move on to another sport.
But John, I mean, I just want to ask you, you've covered programs for a long, but let's get away from women's basketball for a minute. Football, Tennessee, we just said it with Johnny Majors. Haven't you covered a lot of football programs that have stuck weight? And I just said Memphis basketball with Penny, Michigan basketball with Juwan. Haven't you covered a lot of programs that have just ridiculously stuck with coaches for way too long because they coached at the program or played at the program?
I think that can be a factor. It has happened before. I mean, I think Johnny Major's situation, I wasn't here when he was hired, but I mean, he was a proven coach and a proven rebuilder of programs. And he struggled at Tennessee, but I think there were a lot of factors involved in that struggle. And it worked out long term. But yeah, you're right. There are some, I think there is a tendency. You could argue that, to me, excuse me, you've got to understand, what do you want the program to be? If you think all of your programs, if I were an AD, I would hire coaches with the idea, I expect you to compete for a national championship. Now, there's so many variables in that. Winning a national title is difficult. But if you make it the College World Series, I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, no, that's not good enough. You got to win it all one time. No, if you're making the College World Series in baseball, that's great. I would expect that when I make any coaching hire, I expect you to contend for championships. And I don't see why you would hire anybody with any other criteria other than that. You have a lot of resources here at Tennessee. So, but it should have nothing to do. Tennessee could have hired Louisville's coach, Jeff Walls, when it hired Kellie Harper. There's no doubt in my mind. He wanted the job. Hiring, it was simple. He turned Louisville. What was Louisville basketball before he went there? But Tennessee had no interest in him. He's a high-profile coach. He's good on camera. He's good in interviews, and he wins. And he built a program from scratch. So he was right there. And Tennessee said, "No, we want to get one of our own." One of the things that's interesting about the women's basketball program at Tennessee, think of all the great players that Pat Summitt had.
Yeah. I mean, you could keep hiring coaches. You could keep hiring coaches till the end of time.
How many teams took the team to the Final Four as a coach?
I mean, every 4-year player almost made one. Yeah.
What?
But I mean, like this was
the former players as coaches.
Yeah. Who's gone to a Final Four?
No.
Yeah.
No. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, but this was again. It was very, Neil, and look at his coaching tree of football players after he coached. And Bobby Dye was great, but Tennessee hired Harvey Robinson and then Bowden Wyatt, and they stuck with Bowden Wyatt for 10 years, and they should have fired him after 3, honestly.
John,
And
we're going to check your Bowden Wyatt knowledge. Where can we hear you on the World Wide Web?
Well, you can hear me on SEC Unfiltered. It's our knoxnews.com website with Blake Totmeyer, and I do an SEC podcast weekly, and you can read my column there and in the Knoxville News Sentinel.
Throwing heat. John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. We certainly appreciate him. Caleb, Tennessee's one of their 2.
so who's the best legend to ever work out at a program? Is it Steve Spurrier or Jim Harbaugh between the two? Or who else?
Has to be Spurrier because he won the Heisman too.
Bear Bryant was a legend at Alabama, though, but he was a former player, not a legend. I don't know if that counts. But
Yeah, but I mean, when you win a national championship and a Heisman, that to me would be bigger than 2 national championships.